All right. Hi, everyone. It's the top of the hour, so we can go ahead and get started for today. I'm Kaylee Hansen with SVA Consulting, and joining me for today's webinar is Katerina, Andrea, and Austin as well. So pretty exciting topic for today, one that I think a lot of you guys have been interested in, which is kind of all things AI, specifically as it relates to some of the Acumatica world as well. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. One, if it's your first time joining us for today's webinar, welcome. If you're returning again, welcome back. As we go through today's webinar, please feel free to use the chat function and drop any questions that you have in the chat. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end where we'll address those as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Just looking at today's agenda, we'll kind of start specifically focusing on the AI components that live in Acumatica themselves. If you were on our previous webinar, which was all about the 26R1 release of Acumatica, you probably saw a bit of a sneak peek, so it might be a little bit repetitive, but we'll dive a little bit deeper into those scenarios to start. Then we'll get into a little bit of the security as well. So as we start to introduce some of those components, Andrea will take us through a bit of the security related to the Acumatica AI components as well. And then we'll spend a lot of the time today in a live demo. So you'll see a couple of different products as we go through, but really the focus for today is focusing on real life use cases that may be relevant for all of you. So you'll see some of those come into play as we go through, and then we'll just wrap up with some of the Q&A and the next steps as well. All right. So just to start, a couple of things. I'll hand it over to Andrea in a minute here, but she'll start to unpack. Obviously, there's a lot of AI tools. So how can we start to unpack that to make it a little bit easier in terms of, when do we use what's AI and what's not? So I'll hand it over to Andrea to unpack this slide a little bit further.
Yeah, so we really don't want to just assume, with the hammer, with the nail, everything's a hammer, right? So based on the type of need, we want to form the correct solution. And so we'll show you a lot of components today that are in the product, some that are not in the product that SVA has built around I think some really elegant solutions. And so based on the type of need, we can kind of show you what the tool is. So if you want something to monitor the system, so anomaly detection, which is not new to Acumatica, that's been available, but now it's available across all of the generic inquiries. That's something that you can turn on. We can set an alert for you pretty easily to say, hey, this AP bill doesn't look correct. Here's an issue. We can also connect that to an LLM and maybe have a process or an agent in the background saying, hey, this doesn't look correct, and start to investigate it. And that's more of that example of, the human in the loop example of the LLM, will investigate, what happened there and then suggest to you an action to do. And so we can kind of bridge that anomaly detection with some of the LLM component. You'll see some of that today as well, to have a little bit more feature-rich solutions for you guys. And then that second line, the type of need, maybe you want the system to do something. And when it does something, it can have, rules-based or reasoning-based. And so what we mean by rules-based is the same input always equals the same output. Well, that's simply a business event in Acumatica. You don't need an agent for that. You don't really need too much reasoning for that. It's like if A, then B. So if you're not leveraging business events in Acumatica, please reach out to us. But that's a pretty critical tool in terms of automation, but it's not really AI. And so then we also have, if reasoning is needed, we'll show you some of this today. We can connect Acumatica to an LLM. We can put agents on top of that, and they can start to do things like, like plan for you or suggest certain things based on what agents you have set up. The last one is, I want to look something up, or maybe intelligent decision making. So if that data is specific to Acumatica or not, there's different tools that we can use. So maybe I want to look at weather data or look at data outside of Acumatica. That's where we can use that language model. Otherwise, there's pre-built prompts in Acumatica that you can use with AI automation that help to do things like, inform how to solve a case, for example, in Acumatica's case management. And then Acumatica now, as of 26R1, also has that natural language tool as well. And so if you have a generic inquiry that is exposed to AI, we can also use the AI assistant to ask it questions. So that's a little bit of what's available today in the system. We also offer features around that as well, like connecting Acumatica today to an LLM. doing things like mirroring data from different solutions and being able to ask questions of that data as well. So you'll see some of those components today. Um, Next, we'll go through just a very high level slide. We'll send more information here as well. Just in terms of, there's been a lot of questions around AI security and specifically like, well, when does data leave Acumatica? And so just we have a few of the features and then, on the right side, you can see that data just leaves it in the AI Studio example. So with document recognition, that's on AP bills and expense claims as well, or expense receipts rather. That data stays within Acumatica, and then once it's in there, once it creates that AP bill, if you wanted to, you could use an LLM in that AI Studio to ask questions of it. Then that data might leave Acumatica, but again, that really depends on if you have AI Studio set up. With intelligent text completion, all that data is local. Anomaly detection, it stays within your Acumatica SaaS instance. No data is processed outside of the system. And it really uses Acumatica's internal algorithms to identify those anomalies. AI assistant, that's also similar to anomaly detection in that it stays inside Acumatica's environment. And then for AI Studio, that's the only part where it really could go outside. And then we get lots of questions of, well, is my data going to be used to train another model? What is the data retention? Those types of questions really depend on, let's say I plugged in, Anthropic or Claude, for example, into Acumatica. Whatever policy I have with those LLMs really dictate the answers to those questions. So if you have enterprise plans with those providers, you can certainly not allow training on your data and then purge the data on a recurring basis if you wanted to. So just wanted to kind of start with a little bit overview of the AI security model, and then I'll hand it back to Kaylee for the examples.
Awesome. All right, so I'll pivot here into Acumatica. We'll close this out. All right, so now you guys should be seeing Acumatica's screen. So I'll start with some of the examples directly within Acumatica, kind of going off of those features that Andrea just touched on. We won't see everything today, so we do have some webinars on some of the other stuff related to the OCR and some of those components. But what I'll focus on today is the example of the anomaly detection as well as the AI assistant in the AI Studio. If you were on the past webinar, some of these might look a little bit familiar, but we have some different use cases kind of queued up as well. So where I'll start is I'm just going to go into my AP Clerk dashboard. And this is really where I have added the anomaly detection component. So anomaly detection in Acumatica can be added to any generic inquiry within the system. And then based off of that and based on the data that you're feeding into the anomaly detection tool, you can dictate which fields you want it to detect anomalies against. So in terms of my specific use case, I may be an AP clerk. I may have an approval routing on my AP bills in advance of this, but we want a little bit of extra precaution to start to flag any potential anomalies on an AP bill standpoint. So that could be things like, hey, I haven't worked with this vendor in a long time and now they're popping up. That might be a use case for why we want to start to use anomaly detection. Or, hey, this vendor switched the costs on me. They're really, really high. We didn't catch that. Now we want this to potentially flag that, or any potential fraud as well. So really just a mechanism for, as we saw in that initial diagram, kind of monitoring. So we're not doing any action, so to say, but rather allowing the system to use AI to monitor different types of transactions and then flag those to me to my attention. So I have that added to my dashboard, and you can see within that view, I have 12 different potential anomalies. So this is ones that the system has flagged for me of, hey, this is a bit out of the norm. So specifically, the field that I have this set for is the unit cost. So anytime the unit cost is different than the expected value to a certain extent, it's pretty high, something like that, it's going to go ahead and flag that for me. This is where I can start to see on this type of inquiry view. Obviously, we'll see some things like conditional formatting. You saw that right away. We'll have things like an anomaly severity. So I have this filtered of, if there's no anomaly, we're not going to detect it or we're not going to draw it to my attention. I can kind of ignore that at this point. But now I'm seeing things like my medium anomalies and my significant ones as well. If I was to just go ahead and take a look at some of these, this is where I can start to see, okay, why might this be happening? So this is really where some of the person side will come into play. So on the second line item, for example, my expected value is 129. My amount was 100 or 1,260. Obviously, quite a bit higher. And so one thing that could be, just looking at it, is an entry error. Maybe someone who entered that in added an extra zero. So I may want to drill down into that AP bill, correct it, and proceed further. If there's one that doesn't look too far off, for example, this bright red one here, the expected cost was 205. In this case, it was 250. Not too far off, but we could go ahead and we could update that if we wanted to as well. So any of these types of components where it looks good, maybe the vendor increased their prices, we've approved that already, we could go ahead, select that, and then add a comment here as well to say this has been reviewed. It can still show up on this list, so we know it indeed was detected as an anomaly. But now, it's kind of unhighlighting that we have safety to say, okay, we've reviewed that. Maybe we don't want to flag that anymore. But again, you'll have that history of it, who reviewed it, and then any comments that I could add could be visible within this view as well. So just one example of why you might start to leverage anomaly detection. Another common one could be on something like a sales profitability report. Hey, our margins significantly lower. Who heavily discounted that and why? All of those types of things can start to flag to us potential anomalies, and then we can go in and review those as well. So that's kind of use case number one, all around the anomaly detection. Just to reiterate, again, available across any generic inquiry within the system that we decide to add this onto as well. All right, the next component I'll show you will be the AI Studio. So this is the one that on Andrea's diagram previously, this is kind of that one component that would rely on external LLM as an AI tool. So just to show you a bit of behind the scenes of what that looks like, here's where I can set up my LLM connections. So this would be, if we're leveraging ChatGPT internally, Copilot, Claude, whatever the LLM that you guys may or may not be leveraging yet, internally, this is where we start to tap into that. So we can connect that directly within Acumatica. That's going to be kind of the step one. If you guys are in need of assistance in terms of, hey, which LLM do we use? How do we start to connect it? Certainly an area that our team can assist with as well. But just to show you a bit of that, this is going to be kind of step one. And once we have that plugged in, now we have a concept of LLM prompts. So if you're leveraging an LLM today, probably pretty used to asking it questions. Um, People always are a different degree of nice in how they ask the questions to the LLM. But it's a similar concept, although it's going to be in Acumatica and specific to Acumatica data. So just like I may ask ChatGPT, what's the weather going to be today? Now we're going to use a prompt that's kind of pre-built that we've curated, but now it's going to create a response based off of data that exists in Acumatica specifically. So I have some that are just out of the box here. Again, can be kind of across the system. So from a CRM standpoint, I've added one that's just an opportunity summary. So, hey, I was just on vacation last week, managing a lot of opportunities. And when I return, I could use just this AI opportunity summary report to go through all of my open opportunities and see, okay, this is where these were left off, from my team, for example. So that might be one use case of it. We won't get into all the details of how we created this, but you'll see some instructions. So a little bit more technical perhaps than just asking ChatGPT, what the weather is, but there is kind of a similar idea of we're going to give it a prompt and it's going to leverage that to create an output. So in my case, I just have some instructions here, and then these are the components that we can see, okay, to create that summary, in this case, let's look at things like the opportunity description or the opportunity stage or when the estimated close date is. And that can help inform, that summary as well. This is an area that Andrea had mentioned from a data standpoint, a security standpoint. Again, this goes out to the LLM to help create that summary, but any data field that we want Acumatica to leverage or that LLM to leverage, if we don't want that going out to the LLM for that response, we really just want it to be an output within Acumatica directly, we can use that as a masked data field. where it's not going to push that information directly to the LLM. So that's going to be the component that's going to mask it as it goes to the LLM, so they're not reading that data and seeing that data as well. All right, so I'll show you that opportunity summary example here. We'll let this load quick. And then another one could be something like on an operational standpoint, or maybe on an e-commerce standpoint. We don't want to go ahead and curate, all of the item descriptions manually. We want, in this case, ChatGPT to do that for us based off of information. So is it product weight? Is it product dimensions? Is it product, name? All of those types of things can start to feed how it curates a product description. So I'll also show that example as well. All right, so I'll go to my opportunities first. Again, this is more on the CRM side, but I just got back from something. I just want to see kind of where my opportunities are standing. So I could start to filter, maybe we just want to see any that are open because those are the ones I really am looking for a summary on. And now I've added this as a side panel. So as I click on a specific opportunity on the left-hand side, we're seeing this AI summary generate on the right-hand side as well. So we'll give that a minute to kind of generate. This is just giving an overall sentiment. That was something that was added in the prompt, certainly optional. But now I just see a summary. Okay, they've expressed positive interest in a specific product. Here's kind of where that landed, and here are some of the next steps. So let's follow up with her to, confirm that she's seen that proposal, she's comfortable with that, schedule a meeting, all of those types of things. Can go down further, and we can see, different types of summaries and next steps based off of that opportunity specifically. All right. Perfect. So certainly one example, could probably think of a million other areas where we can start to leverage this tool, but really that's the advantage of it. Those prompts can be added to many different screens within Acumatica to start to curate some of those details and some of those summaries as well. All right, that next example, maybe I'm on the e-commerce side and I want to go ahead and create a product description for a specific item. So I'll go into one of mine on this stock item here. I have a description tab, so let's go ahead. We'll remove this description, and maybe, I'm going through an exercise of, hey, we need to create descriptions that are going to show up on my e-commerce site. Again, I created that prompt. And now I'll go ahead and let that prompt kind of do the work for me. So I'll go ahead, generate this description. Again, it's going to look at things like the item description, any attributes perhaps that we have, any item classes or categories, and I'm going to start to curate that based on what I have. So now we can see, okay, here's a pretty detailed description, probably better than I would do if I had to manually do this, and certainly a lot quicker as well. But now I have, some of the key features of this item, the product details, and that description as well. So again, could spend the whole time showing different examples of this, but just a couple of practical use cases related to that AI Studio tool in Acumatica specifically. Okay, so now I'll pivot to the AI Assistant feature. And so this is going to be a little bit different in that it's kind of your traditional AI chatbot. So you may have seen this at the top here, but I'll go ahead, I'll just create a new chat. And now really what we can do with this tool is generic inquiries, so those list views of data within the system, we can dictate which of those should feed the AI assistant that we would want users to start to query it based off of. So now I have this chatbot that I can go ahead, ask questions of my data, and it's just going to query the data that exists directly within Acumatica. So for example, I could ask it something like, hey, I just want to see the top 3 customers. In this case, look at their total invoice amount, who spends the most money with us. So this is going to go through, it's going to generate this response just based off of the data in Acumatica. A couple of things to know as this loads, it is also taking into account user security. So if I shouldn't have access to these invoices, I'm not going to get a response here. I'm going to get, some sort of error or message that's going to say, hey, you don't have access to this area. But now I have the ability, pretty quickly, instead of going into, my invoices, filtering and sorting by amounts, the AI assistant just did this for me. So it's ranking my top 3 customers. I can see the total invoice amount. In this case, it's telling me, hey, I pulled this over the last 12 months. this particular customer has spent, 1.6 million with me. So a pretty big customer. Maybe we should start to, reach out to them, connect with them, whatever the case may be, can drill down further. And then you'll also see here that it's created this particular chart in this pivot table. A couple of other components, it's telling me the source it pulled it from. So giving me a bit more confidence as to, hey, is this information accurate? Is it correct? And then if I wanted to add this to a dashboard view based on the output that they create within the chat assistant by himself, I could go ahead and add that to a dashboard view. So it's not building out kind of that full dashboard for me, but what it is doing is giving me the option to add those as particular widgets to a dashboard if I wanted to and had rights to do so within the system as well. All right. So all of that is kind of everything native Acumatica. Again, there's components that we didn't show today, the intelligent text completion, the cross-sell recommendations, those types of things as well, the OCR. So those are in some of the past webinars. So definitely encourage you guys to check that out. But these are some of the more exciting features. And then those two came out recently in that 26 R1 release as well. All right. With that, we'll pivot a bit to show some additional examples. These are going to be ones that we've kind of specifically set up in Acumatica. In this case, we're not leveraging necessarily the native AI features of Acumatica specifically, but rather leveraging some tools that allow us to become a little bit more sophisticated in how Acumatica is now becoming a source for an AI solution. So just to give a bit of background, I'll show some examples to start. One will be on the realm of kind of querying data and visualizing data, and the other will be around the realm of creating data within the AI sense. So to show you a couple of things that we've done, there may be examples where Acumatica is kind of one source or one system within kind of your group of systems as an organization. So think things like, hey, I have Acumatica to run, core operations and financials as an ERP system, but maybe you have a separate FP&A tool or FP&A solution, or maybe that data lives in things like spreadsheets. So now I could leverage a tool like Claude. Just what we did is we fed Acumatica data to Claude, could be OpenAI, could be a different LLM tool, as well as that FP&A data. And what we had Claude do is essentially create a dashboard based off of different data sources. And then I was able to add these into an Acumatica view as well. So here, if I just hide this to give a little bit more real estate, some of the exciting stuff here. Now I have a pretty sophisticated dashboard. I've added it in Acumatica, so maybe we don't have to go into a bunch of different systems to view this data. But essentially what it's doing is it's created this based off of data that exists in Acumatica, so more related to, the actuals from a financial perspective, as well as data that perhaps lives in an FP&A tool or in spreadsheets, so on and so forth. So now I have this type of view, more of an interactive dashboard that Claude had produced for me. And now I can see things like, okay, here's an executive summary, here's more of the AI side, or the AR side rather, versus the AP side. How is cash moving within my business? What does that cash flow look like? Some of the budget versus actual reporting. So pretty robust in terms of what Claude can produce from multiple different data sources, and then still have the ability, if we want to have Acumatica be kind of that centralized system where we're viewing a lot of information, add that back into the system as well. This one is pretty cool and pretty robust, but if you wanted to do, we get this question quite a bit of how can I start to do, what if analysis planning, whether it's on the financial side, on the operational side, whatever the case may be. This is one that, again, in our example, Claude had produces for us, but now it's kind of a lever of, hey, what happens if my AP growth rate increases by 15%? How does that change, revenue and net income scenarios? Or my collection rates have decreased, or my operating costs percentage have increased as well. So now we have more of an interactive dashboard, again, based off of some of the data in Acumatica, as well as from other sources as well. So pretty cool stuff. Some other examples, just to give you guys some other types of use cases. This is one that we set up pretty quickly. We'll pull this in here once this loads. This is a vendor performance dashboard. So a little bit different of certainly almost all of your vendor data and purchasing data currently is going to exist within Acumatica. Although, as many of you have gone through the implementation process, you may have a lot of historical data that lives in a separate system or your legacy system. So as we're thinking about, hey, we've migrated to Acumatica perhaps recently, all of our current data lives there, but from a vendor standpoint, we still find ourselves going back into our legacy system to view, historical purchase orders, for example. In this example, instead of having to go to multiple different systems, again, I had both of those feed Claude, so a legacy system with old purchasing data as well as Acumatica current data. And so now both of those fed Claude to create this particular dashboard view that we've added in Acumatica as well. So maybe I've been on Acumatica for only a few years since 2022, but certainly my legacy system went all the way back to 2014. So now I have kind of that holistic view of all of this data to bring together this, in this example, vendor performance dashboard. So now I can see, okay, what was the year-over-year change? How did vendors used to, how much did we used to spend with vendors versus how much do we spend now? What's the average cost increase? So over the last, 10 or so years, we've seen a cost increase roughly of about 9% year over year. So if a vendor tried to kind of switch things on us, maybe we start to use that as a benchmark. I could see, again, a more detailed view of my spend by vendor, some of the detailed totals. So now instead of, again, going back into Acumatica, going back to my legacy system, trying to query all of this on my own, it's kind of taken that away, and I can do this more in a centralized spot. This is my favorite because we love to see how we start to rank with others. So now I can see, okay, from a vendor perspective, I have two really excellent vendors. Let's prioritize working with them. Their year-over-year growth is a lot lower than the average across all my vendors who are good. So those are, some good vendors. Spend with them pretty consistently. Costs are pretty stable versus who needs some review. So clearly I have some that have a bit of review in here, but that could be a good indicator for me to say, hey, they've increased their prices by 35%, or in this case, 100%. Maybe we want to flag that and view that a little bit more detailed. So again, just trying to give you guys a realm of, hey, what are some common use cases? How can we start to make things a little bit more sophisticated than just what's native Acumatica AI as well? Last example I'll show, and then we'll get into kind of the writing of data. Another one, a warehouse operations dashboard. So how do we want to see, what's our fill rate? What's our on-time shipment rate? Our cost per order? All of those types of things we can start to feed as well. So could have, again, a million examples of this as well, so I'm sure we're kind of getting the theme for. But some things that we've been doing kind of within SVA to take it up a notch in terms of how can we make things better and optimize additional flows with the tools that we have at our disposal for our customers as well. All right, the last kind of example I'll show, and then I'll hand it over to Katerina to show another real life example, is going to be around the concept of creating data. So kind of two key use cases to show here. I won't run this live just for the sake of time, but essentially what I had in this example is this isn't using Claude. I've fed it with Acumatica data as well as data within my distributor network. So in this example, I may be a manufacturer of some sorts. I have distributors underneath me. I want to see kind of that order history across all of their systems as well as mine for returning. So things get returned to me specifically. Maybe they have serial numbers associated with them. And then I want Claude in this example, based on the serial number I give them, to make sure that this has been purchased either directly through us or through one of my distributors, check my warranty policy that's also been fed into it. And if all of those check the pass or check the gates, I can go ahead and have Claude automatically create, in this case, an RMA order for me. So I ran this already, but if I go into my sales order screen, I can see right at the top there, that's a return order. And what it did is it queried my Acumatica data to say, hey, did we sell this particular serial number? It also queried our distributor network to say, hey, did they sell this serial number specifically? If yes to one of those, then see if it still applies the warranty policy based on what I fed Claude for our warranty policy is. It met policy DE7, and now it's going ahead and creating, in this case, this return for me, since it is, a valid serial number that we did sell. So we can get as sophisticated as having something else create data in Acumatica. One question we get to is, should we have it doing that? If we start to automate it, should an AI tool like a Claude or like a ChatGPT be able to import data in Acumatica? Obviously a bigger conversation there, but that's where we could start to have, hey, make sure it comes in on hold, make sure it goes through an approval routing so that person is seeing that before it goes out, all of those types of things as well. Last example I'll show, and then I'll hand it over to Katerina. Another use case that we have here that we've kind of ran, if you get perhaps a PO from a customer emailed to you guys, maybe we want that to automatically create an order in Acumatica. So in this case, I have a purchase order. If I pop into it, let me show this example actually. Here's just a sample purchase order, but maybe someone sent this to you, and now I have, a reference number of that purchase order. So same type of concept. What I had was Claude wrote back into Acumatica. It took a look at my email, viewed that purchase order, and then went ahead and created that order for me on the sales order side within Acumatica based off of the details within that purchase order attachment that the customer sent me. So now this is a sales order that was automatically created. You'll see it's pulling in that purchase order number. That's just the subject on there as well. So we can have that pulled in. It's pulled in that PO number into that customer order number field in Acumatica, something that we told it to do, and then also pulled in all those details based off of the details they had within their purchase order itself. If I want to pop into my notes, now we can see some additional details. We also have it, hey, we want to look at that file again directly in Acumatica. So I could pop into there. In this case, I have them stored on Google Drive. So we have that link to it as well. All of that was created by Claude. Again, sometimes excites a lot of people, sometimes scares people, but certainly this could go through an approval process if we wanted to do so as well. So just trying to show you guys some of those use cases. Again, querying data, building out dashboards, having those be in Acumatica, as well as writing and creating data for us. So a lot that we can do within these types of tools and what we have available to us. But just to show you guys a few examples that we've started building out specific to certain workflows as well. All
And
right, so
before we
I'm
hand
gonna,
it off to
oh,
Katerina, I think there's a couple of questions that we had come in, Kaylee, while you're presenting that I think are relevant to address now before we move on to the next section here. So one of these questions is, are all the dashboards that you just showed us a couple of minutes ago accessible for existing clients to use? And then where would we get access to those dashboards?
Yeah, so that's an example of one that we can help create or create in tandem with you or create for you. So that's one of the components that's not natively available yet in Acumatica. We're able to do that with our BI team and our Acumatica team as well. So please reach out. I have some next steps as well. We're going to send a survey out and really want to hear what your thoughts are and where you guys want to go next. And if you're interested in this dashboard, certainly want to talk and learn more as well.
And then one other quick question is from another attendee, can the AI assistant write standard reusable reports now?
It cannot. We opened a case on this, and I don't believe that's in the roadmap. And so, if the question is, how do I get data out of Acumatica in a way that that I can report out easily, please contact us because there's lots of ways to do that. But right now, there's not the ability to help for AI to help with the reporting tool or the generic inquiry tool. That's not to say that we couldn't help you work with AI to make it a little bit easier, but natively in Acumatica, that's not currently there.
Thank you.
all right, perfect. I'll hand it over to Katerina then, and Katerina will show us another example that we have set up.
Thank you, Kaylee. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So the tool that I'm going to show right now, it's for all those times where we want to go and dig a little bit deeper into our data, but we have data living in different systems. So a very familiar story for a lot of us is getting a question on our data. For example, how did we perform in Q1 of 2025 and how does that compare to Q1 2026? This is a data question that might live in different systems. Maybe I have an ERP, but then some other team members use Excel. Some other programs that exist in our business as well might be relevant for this question. So you usually first start like diving into different systems, trying to pull raw data from all of these systems. And then once you find the data, oof, there's a data mismatch. So you have to submit a ticket to the data team and wait for them to have the time to resolve it. And, time goes on and you're like, oh, this is a pressing question. So I'm going to jump into a dashboard and trying to investigate there if I can find the answer to my question. The dashboard says one thing, my system says another thing. I try to resort in Excel because I know how to use Excel, and maybe with some old formulas, I can get that answer to me. And you get towards the end of the day without a clear answer to your question. And this is all because you have all these different systems in place and they all report individually. So the end user doesn't have one clear source of truth. There's a lot of manual effort, and there's also room for errors for data mismatches or broken formulas in the meantime. So the tool that I want to introduce to you today is Snowflake Intelligence. So think about being able to ask that question and getting an answer back in just 1 minute. This is what this tool allows us to do. The way it works very generally is that you pull the data from all these different systems that you might have. So maybe you have Shopify, Excel files, your ERP, and you pull all of that data into one centralized data warehouse. In this case, it would be Snowflake. And then on top of that data platform, you build an intelligence layer to be able to communicate with that data and get answers in plain English, natural language. And again, you get those answers in seconds, and it's data that's trusted because it's been cleaned, it's fresh, it's accurate, and you can even do some more digging if you're trying to trace back to the origin of the calculation for your answer. So let me jump to the tool over here. So this is the interface of Snowflake Intelligence. If you've used any chatbots before, such as ChatGPT or Claude, it's a very similar interface. What I can do is ask any questions about my data and get an answer that's grounded in the data and being able to trace back on where I got that answer. So while my answer is loading very quickly to show you what it's doing, I asked a question over here, which accounts are dormant, no orders in 90 plus days. And what the agent is doing here in the background is trying to translate my question in English to SQL statements, which is the language to communicate with your database to get to your results. So here, this is the logic that the agent is following in the background to get to our answer, trying to see, what tables, where is the data located, in what systems, and you'll load an answer for us in a couple of seconds. So here, the answer back for this question is a table with the dormant accounts that I have. And then it even provided a summary by representative with some recommendations. One great thing about this tool is that in addition to doing Q&A and getting answers based on your data, it's also able to reason and provide you some more detailed reasoning and analysis on the answer. So here it's flagging like immediate flags and even recommending reactivation protocol because we also have a playbook connected. So it works great because you're able to connect structured data that you might find in all of your systems. But in addition, if you have some information stored in PDFs, such as playbooks, it's also able to go through those and read those. So the interaction works. It's very simple. It works just the same as you would do in a regular chatbot. And you can have access to, again, all of the data that you have connected to your data platform. If you're worried too about the different users and what type of access they can have, this is not a problem. You can set up role-based access in your database so everybody has access to just the data that they really need. And you can modify this agent in the backend to adapt a little bit the type of responses that you want to see, the tone that it uses in its answers. and all the different systems that you want this connected to. Another thing I want to point out about this tool is that it's also able to generate some artifacts for you. So if I generated a graph in one of my previous conversations, and it's a graph that I want to keep revisiting over and over, such as, for example, here, the Q2 2026 quota target versus actual revenue, I have it over here pinned, and it will update with my most recent data every time I log into this chat over here. So it's a great way for if you want easy access to all of your data in just one screen. So this would be the Snowflake Intelligence solution. Again, it's a solution that lives outside of the Acumatica environment, but the Acumatica data, it's treated as a source for our data to do the analysis based off. So over to you, Andrea.
All right, so I'm just going to wrap us up. Before I do, Austin, any additional questions that came in?
No additional questions. Thanks
All
for taking
right.
those couple of earlier questions.
Perfect. Okay, so in terms of what's next, we really want to hear kind of what you're thinking, what your goals are. So we're going to send a pretty short survey following this. Really want to understand what you're interested in. And I have on there, whether it's vitamins or painkillers, right? So vitamins as in, hey, things that we're like excited to do, we aspire to, versus painkillers, like pain points today. So I think some of the things that we showed, hopefully we'll be able to help with either one of those. And we really want to talk more. And so really that survey, once it's done, we'll reach out to you to schedule some time. We just want to make sure we have the right representation from the SVA team in that session with you, which is why we're asking to do the survey. Stay connected. So we're going to start a newsletter, an Acumatica and SV newsletter. We're getting lots of questions, like I mentioned, on AI security. So we'll put we have much more detail than the table that I showed today. So expect a newsletter in the coming weeks to have some of that information on the security in AI. We'll also include like an AI use case spotlight. So if you have ideas for those, please send those in as well. And then just any key updates and housekeeping items. Our next webinar will be in mid-June. And then, I have on the right side here just a keep learning. So we have our webinar series, which I've linked there, our community, the Acumatica community rather. And then we have started a design for human blog series that's on our website. And really what we're trying to do is just showcase creative uses of AI and Acumatica. And so invite you again to view those. They're typically video based with a blog article as well. So thank you for your time. And if you're interested, again, please complete that survey.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.